Hello there. If you are watching this video, that means I am rigging. Alright, in today's video I'm going to cover rigging for hard surface. Woohoo! It should be fun, only because it's easy to understand. Once it becomes difficult to understand or once it is unclear, it becomes really frustrating. So the goal of this video is to, first of all, feature the work of my awesome student Alec, and I am going to walk you through the process from A to Z, even without editing this video. So hopefully I don't sneeze or make or get any noise. Mainly, I want to keep this video unedited and long format because rigging tends to be annoying and frustrating, especially for new people who are doing rigging. And the reason for that is because many of the videos you would see online, including some of or many of my videos, they simplify things, and in some cases, for especially for people who don't really know what's going on or they're really new to rigging, they would see those videos as oversimplified, which means they become intimidating or they give you the impression that, oh, this is easy, and then you dive into it, and then, oh, that is a lot more difficult. So, my goal is to cover everything. So, starting from the point of, okay, you have an asset that is not grouped and it's not in the right location, and it has uncleared history, and it has some of the objects don't have frozen transformation, all of that. All of these, what is problematic for rigging, that is all great because then we will be able to really understand the whole process. So the information that I'll be providing here can be applied to any other hard surface project you're working on. Okay, so the first thing I would start with, I would make sure that nothing is parented. Parenting. If you want to parent something, let's say for instance, this hull here of this sub. If you move this, nothing is parented to it except these. So I don't want them to be parented to it. So I'll select and then select everything, Shift P. Now everything is unparented. Now, if I move this hull, and let's say I want this body to be parented to this hull, meaning if I want this to be the father and this the son, I select the son first, Shift select the father, P as in parent. You can also find it in edit and then parent or unparent. So now that this is the father, if you move it, it's going to move also the child with it. However, if you click on the child and you move it, it moves separately. This is what is called parenting. I'm not going to dive deeply into the parenting yet, but, bit by bit, baby steps. Okay. So I'm going to hit spacebar and go to the side views and select everything. Just make sure nothing is parented. So Shift P, multiple clicks wouldn't hurt. Select everything and move them up. Anything we parent must be sitting on the grid, ideally. Okay. Next, I'm gonna go to the side view and push it somewhere, maybe here, the center-ish. That's okay. Yeah, just at least roughly. Okay. Now I have to freeze the transformation of these pieces. What does that mean? Right now, this object here has the values, these values for the translation, which means if I go and zero these, it's going to go back to the original position. But before we start applying rigging and parenting and grouping, all of that jazz, we want to make sure that they're all on the same page. They all agree that this turbine here is exactly where it should be at the 0 position. Same for the turbine cover, same for this piece, same for the tanks. So all of those, I select them, and then you can either hit spacebar, modify, freeze transformation, which is the faster way than doing the other approach, which is modify, freeze transformation. Instead of taking an Uber all the way to the menu, you can hit the spacebar. And the spacebar is the hotbox, which offers you a wide selection of many things that are in a shortcut kind of position here. So now that they're all at their 0 position, notice how zeros, and of course for the scale it has to be 1. That means if anything goes wrong, like you accidentally do this, you accidentally do that, then you can simply select all of them. Select this, the translation, 0. There you go. Okay. Speaking of which, I think this is a sphere. I would cut this for sure, but that's a topic for a different situation. Okay. Next, there are two main things you do before you start parenting. The first one is freezing transformation. The other one is making sure that all of your assets have cleared history, which means if you modify something, it's going to keep that history to it, like this. So we want to clear that history for many reasons, but to say the least, it's to make sure that your files are clean and light. So in some cases, if you have a lot of modifications, even on the UVing, not just the modeling, it records all of that history. Excuse me, I had to cough. Records all of that history and it accumulates it as data. So it increases the tendency of the file to crash. That's why we call it like a cleaner version. And of course, if you have done some modifications and if you want to do modifications later, it becomes really problematic because there might be some confusion or overlap. Okay, so instead of selecting every single object and go to edit, delete by type history, the shortcut is Alt-Shift-D. You can also select all of them and hit Alt-Shift-D. But I also want to show you the following. If you go to edit, delete all by type history. This is one thing you need to practice before you submit a project to a client, to a kind of a professor, you're working on a project. This would guarantee that everything gets their history cleared. Because sometimes you select certain things and you're not sure if you've selected everything right. Then edit, delete all by type history would guarantee that everything will be great. There's another camera I'm gonna delete. Okay. So now that my asset is on the grid, this is what's called zero grid. Now I can start to create the master controller for it. What is the master controller? The master controller is a curve, a type of a NURB. So you go into NURBS primitive and you go to circle. It looks like that. I'm gonna scale it up. And now I want to eventually to use this to move that submarine, rotate that submarine, and maybe I could attach other features to it, such as controlling the turbines. Okay. Now, you may make a choice here of either keeping it as is, or you select everything, deselect the master controller and say, you know what? I wanted to control the sub this way, almost like hovering, to give me that feeling that it's hovering. In the meantime, I like the master controller to be a little bit free. Okay, that's definitely a good idea. So we can go with this setup. It's a matter of preference. Now here's a pro tip for you. If you look at the side view, front view, side view, and you deselect, you can easily miss that curve, right? Sorry, I had a phone call. Okay, so as you can see here, you could easily lose it, right? Especially if you have a grid or if you have many other things or if you have even like a plane or some, something on the ground. So the pro tip for you here is the following. Right, you select the master controller and then control vertex. Let me change the background color, Alt B. By the way, the black background with Alt B is really useful for rigging, super useful, as you can see here. Now I'm going to select. You can customize it however you want. You can normally here's one thing that you can always go with, like this or this. You can also select these two and lift them up. This is a really common one too. So for instance, if you go to now to the side view, you can easily see it. You don't mistake it. In the meantime, you can customize it. You can say, you know what? I'm gonna make these to shrink in a little bit, and then maybe I'll hold all of those, lift them up. This would be fun. The other thing you want to keep in mind is something that you may not know, even if you've used the circle before. You may change this from cubic to linear. Normally it would give you like more like hexagon or pentagon, whatever the amount of sections you have. So you can change those sections. I guess that's going to change the amount of vertex. Let's say 12. Yep. So that's going to increase that. So now if I go here, as you can see, you have a lot more vertices. And of course, you make that modification before you change the shape. But with that said, I'm happy with this shape. Let's keep it that way. I might just take these two and tone it down just a little bit. Yeah, let's just do that here too. Okay. Now Alt B back again to the blue. Okay. So now before I utilize this as the master controller, I want to name it master or MSTR possibly. And then underscore CTRL controller. Okay. Next, edit, delete by type, history, Alt Shift D as well. Also modify freeze transformation and then freeze the transformation, because anytime I want to change this or move it around, I want to make sure that there's always a home point for it. Just like when you fly a drone, the launching place and position is the home point. So if you have flown some drones before, this is when you hear the home point has been updated. Okay. Next, I want to decide what is going to be parented together versus the curve. For instance, if I select everything, deselect the master controller and then select the master controller and then hit P again, the last thing that gets chosen is the father. So one more time, I had that curve selected, okay? So I selected everything, deselected what I want to be the father, and then selected it again, and then it becomes the father. Now let me show you this in geometry. When I select all of these geometry, see that green? That green is not just a random color. It's Maya telling you, if you hit P now, I'll show it to you. P, this will become the father. Why? Because Maya decided that this is the object that was chosen or selected last. Now I'm going to select everything, deselect, and then select that master controller. It's hard to tell that this is green because by default it's green, but you'll trust me when I hit P. Now it is the father of everything. Before I continue, let me take you to something that may interest you. And also it's a pro tip. I'll select that curve, hit Control A to go to the attribute editor, which is as you can see here. Next, I'm going to, let's see, is it here? I think it should be here. Display object. It's going to take me some, I'm looking for drawing overrides, this one. So it's in the second tab, and then you go into object display, and then you find drawing overrides, and then you click on enable. Okay, so far it's not doing anything. But if I go and change this, you're actually changing the color of that master controller. I know some of my students love that neon green or purple. Who doesn't like the color purple? This is definitely a great color to go with. It's very easy to notice, and it's a cool number, a cool color too. Yeah, let's go with this one, vibrant green. And the thing is, normally, for instance, like professionally, when you're rigging like a human, if you have two sides, what they do is they color one side with a specific color and another side with a specific color. So you would always know this is the right hand and this is the left hand. So they usually use blue and red. Okay. So with that said, now my master controller is about ready to be put into action. So right now it's moving everything. And what I was saying before is that in some cases you might want to make the turbines to be parented to the casing. And then instead of parenting both the turbines and the casing, you only select the casing and you parent it to that, if that is giving you a specific purpose or utilization. And in order for me to explain this a little bit more, I'm going to tap into the more advanced materials or examples, and that may make this video confusing. So let's keep it that way. Okay. Now, I've got everything moving. So what is the benefit of actually using the master controller as of now? It just does the same thing as selecting all of the objects. Well, it's going to guarantee that you don't accidentally make things like that. You can always be sure that just selecting this one is going to animate everything. But as of now, we could still make those accidental mistakes. What is the proper way to further utilize the master controller? That's a good question. I'm going to select everything and hit Shift P. So now nothing is parented. Then I'm going to select the geometry. And then I'm going to click here on this menu. This is the display layer. And I'm going to put those geometry pieces into that display layer. Normally, you should be able to have that even without unparenting. You should be able to do the same process without unparenting, but I unparented just to make sure that the father doesn't go with them. It shouldn't be the case. So just to not confuse you, in case that was confusing, I can simply just select the geometry even without unparenting. I can simply select the geometry, go to the display layer, click on this button, which is going to create a new layer that has specifically the geometry that I have. Now I can hide it, but that doesn't really give me any purpose as of now for rigging. Instead, I'm gonna go to this box here and check one check. This is template mode. That's why you see T. And that gives you the opportunity to have full control and view of your materials, but without the shaded geometry. And if your scene is very heavy, this is a life-saving feature. But for this example, I'm gonna click one more button that's called reference, R. Now I cannot accidentally make the mistake of selecting the geometry. So simply you can just drag the whole thing, and anytime you do, you're actually just selecting the father. Okay? All right, so now I have everything I want. I can even scale it if I want to. Probably not gonna do that, but it seems like the curve was not, maybe I have moved the curve a little bit. Let me just type here 0. Okay, so this was, I guess, the original position. Okay, so now what I want to do is to make a quick example of animation just to show you what I have right now. Okay, select that master controller, hit S. Now S is going to record everything. If you want to only record the translation, like these, okay, translation shortcut in Maya is, as you know, W, right? So if I hit Shift W, it's going to record a key animation keyframe specifically only for the translation. This way, when I go here and move it like that and hit W, Shift W, sorry, then it's going to record that movement on the W. The reason why this is good is because you don't end up with so much of those animation keys, so much because at some point it becomes completely uncountable. To the point where it adds more data to the scene, and also it makes it really confusing to go to the panel, and then I'm going to go to the graph editor. Becomes really confusing to go to the graph editor and modify your animation. So I'm going to tear off a copy because I'm going to need that in a bit. In the meantime, for views, here's the perspective. Okay. But let's just simplify the keying process. Let's say I want to just key everything and make my animation a lot easier. So I would select these. That's one way to eliminate the keys. Right mouse button and break connections. Go here to the beginning, type in 0 to take it back to the 0 position. I'm gonna minimize this menu so it doesn't bother us. Okay, so now let's start over. And I'm gonna go here into this button at the lower side where it looks like a kind of a rotation. That is going to make any automatic keying of those keys, the animation that I make. Meaning, if I hit S now and go here, by just moving the master controller, it's going to make a key and therefore it does that movement. I'm gonna play the animation and you're gonna get scared. Why does it look so horrendous? That's because Maya is playing the animation as fast as it can. So to solve that issue, right mouse button, this is definitely something you need to know. Then you go into the playback speed, you click on the last option. So because now the animation is automatic and because I hit all of the keys, at this point I can simply, by the way, if you want to jump into from one key to another, you can hit the period or the comma. Very useful. So now I can jump to this key and rotate. it's going to record that rotation. As you can see, it's in red color. Pink is something that does have animation, but not exactly where I'm standing. Okay. Red means I have animation on that subject or channel, specifically on the frame I'm standing on. So look at that. Okay. So this is the straightforward way to do this. You're simply making the rotation on the master controller, and it's recording that animation. Look at that, wonderful. It's like drifting. Okay, we should have some Tokyo Drift soundtrack there. Okay. You can, if you want, with making some advanced changes or a little bit complex changes, you can make this to do some banking, some turning, all of this. You can definitely do that. But I think to keep things simple, just rotate and translate the master controller and you should be fine. This is totally fine. Okay, let's start over now. I'm gonna break the connections. Okay. Now I want to experiment with the turbines. The turbines, I want to have them to be under the controller as well. So your master controller would have everything in it. What do I need to do? I want to create a new attribute in here just for the rotation of those turbines. Okay, I'm gonna remove the reference so I can touch those or select those turbines. I'll put this to 0. Oh, not the right one. So all of them, maybe I changed something. I'll just select everything. So I'm gonna restart the parenting system, but this time I'm going to add a new attribute specifically for the rotation of the turbines. Okay, I can simply continue with this as is. It doesn't bother me, but I just aim for perfection. So I'm gonna select all of these, Shift P. Now everything is unparented. Now I can select those turbines or pretty much everything and then go to Modify Freeze Transformation. So now those turbines are 0. Okay. Now, what I want to do is select everything, deselect the master controller, select the master controller, hit P. So now the master controller, like before, has control over everything, and those turbines are actually at 0 translation. Even though the translation doesn't really matter, it's just that it's good to see zeros just to keep things really neat. Okay, now I'm gonna select the master controller and then I'm going to click on Add Attribute. This is really cool. You're gonna love this. I'm gonna call this Turbine Rotation, ROT. And I want it to be going from the value of 0 to 100. If you have a door, then ideally you want to have it to start from 0 to 10, for instance. So it would be open, and then when it's closed, then it would be 0. However, if you're talking about like a barn door, the barn door goes both ways, correct? If you're dealing with a barn door, let me just elaborate a little bit in case that is a little difficult. Change the pivot point. So if you have a door that only moves this way, then in that case, you want to rig it in a way 0 and then 90. or 45. Opens, closes. But if you have a door that is like a barn door that goes this way and this way, then in that case, you want it to go from plus 10 to minus 10, and the 0 would be the neutral. Soon you will understand exactly what I mean. Now, going back here to the master controller, as I mentioned, I clicked here on edit and then add attribute, and here is where I am. And oh, I think I lost that name there. So turbine ROT. The minimum is going to be 0. The maximum is going to be 100. And hit add. OK. Or cancel. Close. Here it is. So as of now, it has the maximum value of 100. So nothing happens no matter what I change there, because nothing is actually rigged or connected to it. Okay. How do I connect the rotation of those turbines into the channel here? We do what is called driven keys. To do so, you do the following. It's kind of odd, but you have to select any random channel. And then when you go to edit, now you can go into set driven keys. If you have nothing selected, you go to edit, there's nothing. So anything on even any object, right? Any of these channels. Edit, set driven key. From here, we're gonna reset anything. We're gonna reset everything anyway. So now I'm gonna select the master controller, load driver. The master controller is my driver. And who is the driven? The driven is these guys. Load driven. Now let me rename them. Turbine 01. Select this one. Turbine 02. Turbine 03. And turbine 04. Okay, I'll select them again, and notice when I click on load driven, it's going to update the names. Wonderful. So here's the process. Here's your master controller, your driver. You choose the channel that you want to have control over the action, and then from here, from the driven, you select the channel that you want it to be affected. So in this case, that's going to be rotate. You can tell from the red color. It's going to be rotate X. See that? Okay, so now we know that Alec didn't have the pivot point correctly. Control 1 to isolate. D to loosen up or free the pivot point. Click and hold V, and then middle mouse button. Now let's see if that's going to work. Yep. Okay. I'll do the same thing here. Okay. So now if I select rotation, they look good. Okay. So it's going to be rotate X. Now here's a side pro tip for you. If you want to make no mistakes when it comes to the rotation and not accidentally do this, okay, or do that, you can select the ones you don't want, right mouse button, and then you're going to go to lock selected. This way, when you select them, it only rotates in one direction, and that eliminates any odds of mistakes. Furthermore, if you want to make it even better, instead of selecting them and going lock selected, even better, you do right mouse button and then lock and hide selected. Now, why do I prefer this? Because with them selected, load driven, notice how this is gonna shrink now. See that? It's cleaner. Okay. So with that said, you should be able to still move it this way. So nothing to worry about it. Okay? Because we want to make sure no matter what happens, they don't rotate in an awful way. Now, one more time, I'm gonna close that driven keys menu, select the master controller, go to any of the channels there, then set driven keys. Select the master controller again, and then load driver. Then select those turbines, load driven. Select all of them, and now if I select rotate X, and then if I tap on turbine rotation, if I hit key, that's going to be the start of rigging the driven keys. But before I do so, you want to make sure when you select on that master controller, this is set to the minimum value. In this case, 0. Okay? Because now when I select the turbine rotation and I selected the channels for all of these guys, when I hit key, now there is the initial key for those turbines. Now here's something I want to show you. After you hit that key, any of these turbines, if you select them, look at this. There is something that is blue. It's not red, which means it's not animated. But blue means it has some sort of a connection or expression to it. So with that said, now I'm gonna select these guys again. You can see that you can select them from here, almost like an outliner. And now, if I select the master controller, and I'm gonna put this at 100, which is the maximum number, right? As you can see here, the maximum number. Okay, now I need to change the rotation of these guys. Okay, so here are the turbines, and the rotation is still at 0. If I hit key now, it's gonna key it from 0 to 0, nothing's gonna happen. But if I put this to maybe 100,000 rotation or degrees, it's not really rotation, but rather degrees. Okay, I changed that, but I have still yet to click on key. Before I do so, make sure master controller rotation, and then these, and then this is the channel, and hit key. 1 second. Okay, where was I? So yeah, if I select now the master controller, here's the rotation. With the middle mouse button, I'm changing the channel. And here's another pro tip for you. If you're using the middle mouse button and you're moving things, as you can see, because I set the number really high because I want to have a lot more control over it later. I don't want to, I want to keep it moving for as long as I want. But if you want to make minor adjustments to the attributes here in a channel, if you hold down shift, it goes 10 times faster. Like you can see the 100 goes really fast. If you hold control, it goes 10 times slower. See that? Okay, so now with that said, I do have my driven keys all set. As as a recap, you mainly select the driver, and then you select the controlling attribute, and then you select the driven, could be one driven or multiple drivens, and then you can select the channel, and then once you hit key, it's recording. So you start with the beginning, and then the end, and then you key, and then you end up with that animation. Now, similarly, remember when I talked about making like banking and rotation for this whole vehicle, if I want to? Similarly, you can have the whole object here as a group, and then eventually, if I rotate here, it's going to look horrible, by the way, so don't freak out, okay? If I go to world, and if I want to unparent everything here, Shift P, guess what? Even though this is not the father anymore, check this out. The animated driven keys or the driven keys connection is still there. It is not related to a parent. It doesn't have to be done to a parent. That is an important distinction to make. Now here's, if you enjoyed that driven key process, which you should because it's really fun, then here's the thing. I'm going to select everything, okay? And then I want to deselect the turbines, okay? And you know what? I'll keep everything just all together, and then hit G. Control G. Control G now is going to create a group for me, which is here, right? So sub group or submarine group, not subgroup, just to make it clearer. Sub as in lower, but submarine is the sub. Okay, so now I select that group and I can rotate it, right? And that group, I'm gonna change that the group's pivot point to be in the center. Like here. So now when I select that group again, as you can see, the rotation is this way. So now I can do this type of movement. I can do this type of movement, right? In the meantime, even when I do that, I'll select the master controller. Look at the rotation. It's still set, unbothered by any of these changes. Wonderful. Now, I am going to select the group that is holding everything together and then shift select the master controller, P. Now the master controller takes control of the group, which takes control of all of these components. Okay? Why is this useful? Because now I can apply a driven key here, edit, I'm on the master controller, add attribute, and then sub turning. Okay? If turning is the right name, I guess. Then what I want to do is to have the minimum of -10 and the maximum of 10, for instance, and hit OK. Now I have turning. What does the turning do? As of now, nothing, but is set to 0 as the middle value for it. Okay? And now I'm going to select any channel, edit, set driven key, and then I want to select the group to be the driven and the master controller to be the driver. Select sub turning, and then for the group I want the turning to be on the Y rotation. Okay, so rotation Y, rotate Y, hit key. Now it's set the 0 value for the turning. Now I'm going to change the turning to -10. Okay, and I'm going to select the group, which is also here. And then I'm going to make the turning to be, let's say, minus or plus 30 degrees. And then hit key. Then select the master controller set the +10 value, and that value is going to be rotation of -30. And key. What do I have now? I have the following. If I set this to 0, I'm going to hit S, so it's recording everything. And then I'm going to move it about 40 frames. Okay, so as of now, my animation looks like this. Cool. But at the frame 40, I wanted to also do a little bit of turning. Okay, so now instead of me selecting that master controller and rotating it, check this out. I will always have a clear path of where the master controller is going while having some turning to it. So as I was rendering this video, I noticed that the last portion was, for some reason, the screen was frozen. So I'm redoing the last part now. Hopefully the video is still going to be consistent. If it doesn't make sense, this part on, or if it's a little confusing, let me know. So now that I have the master controller with a turning feature on it, I have the animation also for the turbines. I can also add I'm gonna hit up on the keyboard. If you select an object and you hit up arrow on the keyboard, it takes you up higher in the hierarchy, which means it goes into the group. And if you hit up again, it's gonna take you to the master controller. So that's definitely a good thing to learn. So select one of the objects, hit up, so I know now I am on the group, and I can also see that the group now is selected. So now I can also make a feature or an additional channel here or attribute just for that pitch up and down. So overall, you're gonna end up with a whole bunch, and that's great. And technically, you can like something you need to know. You can select both of them together and see that. So you can animate multiple channels at the same time, which is great. But it's a little bit painful because you have to do every little move. Is there something a bit more organic? Something that is more fun to use? And the answer is yes. That is going to utilize the power of parent constraints. What is parent constraints? It's a different type of parenting, and like for instance the straightforward parenting with P on the keyboard, it would change the scale, it would change the rotation, it would change the translation, heck, even it would change the material. If you apply a material to a parent, it would also apply to the child. Now, if you want to have a more niche or more specialty parenting, that's where we go into the parent constraint. And the example I'm going to show you is what is used for characters for eyes. So you have the face where it's going to, move that face wherever it is. But what if I have a spotlight here? What if I have I want a mechanism that makes it easier for me to animate this guy here instead of just going to the curve and animate it. So let me introduce you to another thing. So if you go to the create and then NURB primitives, you go to circle. Circles are your best friend when it comes to rigging. So here is the side view. I'm gonna maximize this, hold down or click space. I'm gonna rotate this 90 degrees. So by the way, if you hold down J, it's going to rotate in increments. Those increments are can be changed, by the way, if you want. You can make it 15 degrees, every 10 degrees, every 5. Okay. So now I have that curve and I want to make it special. So maybe I'll make it like oval. And then here is a And now that I have the aim constraint controller and I have some animation on that master controller, I'm going to erase this here. So click, left mouse button, shift and hold and drag. That basically selects all of those keys there and then delete. So one more time, I'm gonna do the animation, but this time without the turning, okay? And I'll just make it to move forward. So the animation is this way. Now what I want to do is to have that submarine to be looking always at that curve. And the way to do it is you select the father, then control select because I'm on the outliner, not shift select. Shift select is in the interface. Control select the main group, then space bar, and then go to constraint, tear this off. Next, I'm gonna go into the aim constraint. Click on the option box, it's very important. Make sure you have maintain offset activated. If you have the maintain offset off, once you apply it, there's going to be a change. Sometimes that change is drastic. So always check that on. In some cases in rigging, having the maintain offset off is useful, but not in our case here. Now I'm gonna hit apply. Now notice how if you click on the group, you would notice that there's some coloration here. That means there's some connection, meaning now my sub is a lot easier and smoother to animate instead of using driven keys for that purpose. Okay, so let's play the animation and look at this wonderful surprise. Whee! Not good, right? The reason for that is because this master controller of the aim is not influenced or connected or parented to the master controller. So select that curve that has the aim, shift select the master controller, hit P, only making the master controller more powerful because now it has all of these connections to it. And let's go to the top view. Okay, I'll make the curve this way. So now it's easier for us to identify the direction where that sub is. It's not, it's a trivial thing. Okay, now I'm gonna hit S on that curve so I can animate it. And then I'll go all the way till the end of the animation, as I mentioned before, I believe. I click period, so it takes me all the way to the next keyframe, which is here. So I'm gonna select that controller for the aim and hit S. So now I have key at the beginning and key at the end. Now in between, I can do some scouting. So that is going to give me this animation. Now, of course, this is not how you would animate a submarine kind of turning, right? So instead, you would have to also complement it with some movement here, right? By that, I mean a movement from the master controller. But when it comes to animation, we have to start step by step so we don't lose track of things. But now at least you get the point. That is the power of the aim constraint. And of course, in the meantime, we can do some animation for the turbines. So here's the master controller. I'll go to the very beginning, comma, comma, comma. and I'll right mouse button here, key on, or I can just pretty much hit S to key the turbine, and then I can simply go till the end and say I want the turbines to be maybe 20,000, 2,000. Oh, right. No, sorry. 100. Yeah, this is what happens when the glitch in the recording happens and then you lose track of. Yeah. So 100, so that's going to be the maximum. Okay. Here's an example of when we use the graph editor. I went to the very beginning of the animation and then to the end, the very end. Okay. And then in between here, I do have keys that I clicked with the S, which means it has saved the turbines. Let me show you precisely there. Okay, it's doing okay. Well, if you want to change a specific animation, like one of the animations, to be different than the rest, you can always go to that panel that I opened here, or just to remind you, you can go to the panel and then graph editor, and then you can select here, let me take a look, turbine rotation. If you want, you can add keys to it. Let's say if you hit, if I click here, for instance, notice how all of these are pink and only these two are red because only those have changed. But what if you have accidentally hit S before and it was setting this to be 0? Then in this case, you have to go, you cannot just go key at the very beginning and key at the very end. No, because it's going to be different. It's going to have that difference there. So in the graph editor, you can just go here and modify that. In fact, you can also delete a specific key. And also, if you want to make it linear, you select the curve. And again, you can select specific channels there and just make it linear. Let me show you the difference with the linear now. It's going to start turning on immediately, no eases, which is not, in this example, not great. So if you want to fix that, go back to the panels and then graph editor. I clicked undo. I guess I'll just flatten it. And then to fix that, you can click on ease in and ease out. So that should be in here. Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay. They changed the interface a while ago, so I haven't been doing a lot of graph editor. So anyway, so hopefully that clarifies a whole lot of stuff and gives you a good introduction into rigging. This is not the usual. It's a long format video, painfully long, but hopefully my explanation were at least educational and not boring. The subject is definitely boring. That's why you don't see me doing a lot of rigging. But rigging is super important. So we have to learn it. And especially in a case like this, just having the submarine is not enough. You need to add some rigging to make it really, to make the best use case of it. Shout out to Alec for making this wonderful submarine in actually a very short time. So I'll add in the description a link for his wonderful portfolio. So give him a follow. And with that said, thanks everyone.